Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
A massive warm welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I got a great guest for you today because I recently learned that a company called Hydra Energy is the world's first hydrogen as a service provider for commercial fleets looking to reduce costs and emissions with limited risk and no upfront investment. All sounds a little bit too good to be true, but it isn't. And the company's innovative approach sources green hydrogen from leading chemical partners and provides clean fuel to fleets at best below diesel prices, enabling a rapid and economic transition to cleaner trucking. And in exchange for long-term discounted fuel contracts, Hydra quickly converts semi-truck fleets to a proprietary hydrogen injection system, helping operators optimize truck performance, fuel efficiency, and emissions reduction regardless of the payload or the weather. How do they do this? What is the role of technology in all this? That is just a few of the topics we're going to be talking about today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Vancouver in Canada so we can speak with Jessica Verhagen about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Jessica. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Neil, on the podcast. My name is Jessica Verhagen. I'm the CEO of Hydra Energy based here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Personally, I'm really interested in the intersection of environment and economics. I was involved working with the British Columbia government and putting one of the first carbon pricing regimes in place in North America. The cap and trade system that's now in place in California and Quebec were all modeled around that same design. I've also started my own fund. I was one of the original group to put together a fund that focused on early stage clean technology companies that raised $100 million and went on to invest in that really difficult area for entrepreneurs of they call it the valley of death sometimes, where you have some government grants or you just came out of a university lab, but you're not yet with your first customers. That's always a very interesting and challenging space. But I went on to work for one of the global top 100 clean tech companies that did an industrial wastewater treatment system and supported the raise of their Series B, got them their first customer. And then I left from there to get more international experience in London, actually, close by where you are, working for an impact fund over there, and then was lured back to Vancouver again because I missed nature. And there's a burgeoning tech scene here, a lot of supportive government policy and network in this region, and particularly around hydrogen, with Ballard being based here too. And I was really attracted to Hydra's business model.
It's an incredibly cool journey that you've been on there. And Hydra Energy is described as the world's first hydrogen as a service provider for commercial fleets looking to reduce costs and emissions with limited risk and no upfront investment, which is, again, I'm going to love drilling down into that a little bit more in a few moments. But for most people listening, of course, this will be their first introduction to Hydra Energy and your technology and how you're using it. So can I ask that you set the scene and tell me more about the kind of problems that you set out to solve with technology?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question and a perfect one to start on. What's the problem? It's really looking at how internal combustion engines are here to stay for a while. Not to say that won't shift over time, but we're not talking about a short timeline of a year or two and suddenly seeing electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cells everywhere, especially in heavy-duty trucks. So that means with internal combustion engines that you're stuck with, or it seems like you're stuck with fossil fuels with a whole bunch of greenhouse gas emissions. And also the costs of some of these new trucks, which are starting to hit the market, are 2 or 3 times the cost of incumbents. So it's just really not doable for fleets. They're not typically high margin businesses. You're looking at 2 to 5% margins. They can't afford to pay a lot more for the fuel, let alone the capital costs of 2 to 3 times for a new truck. So it's finding a sweet spot in the interim to be able to have some emission reductions and offer a cleaner fuel to burn in internal combustion engines for these fleets in a way that doesn't void their warranties. When we're thinking about solving the problems, it's almost like these tiers of problems. The top tier is, how can we provide cleaner solutions in an internal combustion engine? And then as you drill down with customers, you learn more and more about them. And the other problem that they face after the price will be around voiding their warranties. They don't want to take the risk of a new technology that might end up destroying their whole truck. So it's kind of getting into those details where the rubber hits the road that gets really interesting.
And I'm curious, how does it all work? Can you expand on how Hydra quickly converts semi-truck fleets to proprietary hydrogen injection systems and helping operators optimize truck performance, fuel efficiency and emissions reduction, regardless of payload and weather? Because it just sounds incredible for somebody outside of the industry and listening how you're using technology to tick all of these boxes. But can you tell me how it all works?
Yeah, sure. The conversion itself is actually relatively simple. We're installing a tank rack at the back of the cab. If you imagine where the driver sits is the cab area, and then there's a trailer hauling the goods. The space in between is enough for us to stick a tank rack that holds hydrogen in those tanks. And then it's pumped up to the front of the truck towards the engine, where we have some fueling injectors on top of the engine block that have an air intake as well. They take in the oxygen, and then they inject hydrogen into the combustion chamber where the hydrogen co-combusts with diesel. So currently we're up to 40% hydrogen blending into that diesel, which equates to about a 40% greenhouse gas emission reduction. And then as I was talking about with the problem that we're trying to solve, this conversion doesn't modify the engine block. And what that means is it doesn't affect the warranty with the fleet's dealer. So the fleets don't have to worry about warranty issues. It's also fully reversible. So a lot of these fleets have a 5-year contract with their dealership, and then afterwards that lease ends and they give it back to the dealer, and the dealer then sells it on to another type of customer. And they want to be able to make sure they can resell that. And we offer it in such a way that in the hydrogen as a service model, we can uninstall our kit so they can then sell it on to someone that may not be close by hydrogen fuel. Because in our model, it is the conversion kit that you mentioned, but it's also the way that we offer it as a service. So it's the business model innovation of being able to offer the conversion kit and offer a refueling station for fleets that don't have to pay for that upfront. What they sign on the opposite side is a contract with Hydra to supply the hydrogen. And we make our money from selling the hydrogen, not the kits or the fueling station. That's just built into the cost of hydrogen for us. And because we're sourcing the hydrogen from areas where it's lower cost, kind of low-hanging fruit of byproduct hydrogen, we're able to then offer the fleets the hydrogen at a discount. So not only are they not paying for the capital costs of new equipment or the installation, they're also not paying more than the price that they would have paid for diesel. Well, we can be on par, even slightly less than the price of diesel for them on the fuel side.
And there does seem to be a really big focus on sustainability right now. But of course, you guys have been committed to this for much, much longer. And I'm curious, how important is it for you guys to make the world run greener, especially when it comes to goods transportation? Because it seems it's really embedded into your ethos and everything that you stand for, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason why we exist. And for me personally, having been motivated in my career to work on projects and initiatives that are all about sustainability, Hydra made the most sense because it's actually focused on the most difficult to abate sector, heavy-duty trucking. And being able to offer a solution that can drop emissions 40% has certainly been hugely motivating, I think, for the whole team at Hydra, and gives us a sense of purpose together. In addition, I don't think we want to stop at 40%. A few years back, we were at 30%. Now we're at 40. We're hoping to get to 50 by 2023, and then continue to increase our displacement of diesel over time to offer a greener and greener product.
And I suspect for many people listening, they may have concerns around range, especially with the vast miles that these trucks will cover. But am I right in saying that Hydra trucks can seamlessly just switch to running on diesel if the hydrogen runs out? Is that right?
Yeah, it's like in the passenger vehicle side of things that people might be more familiar with. It's like driving a Prius. It can just seamlessly switch. As the driver, you don't even notice that you're switching. You just have a little pop-up on your computer screen to say that's the case. But it is true, a lot of concerns with new vehicles are around range. So the seamless switching does alleviate that concern. At the same time, though, you do want, because I was describing how Hydra makes our money is by selling the fuel, so you do want them to actually be using the hydrogen. So we do focus our business development efforts right now on fleets that are called return to base. It means they drive out, say, maximum 400 or 500 kilometers, and then they come back to base again so we can fill them back up with hydrogen. Over time, of course, we would hope that there's more hydrogen fueling stations across the countries that we work in. But for now, it's really us building that infrastructure. And there's only so many fueling stations that we can afford to build. So focused on return to base fleets initially.
And what kind of feedback have you received from truck drivers and haulage firms? Have they been quite welcoming and interested in embracing this technology, or were they a little bit intimidated, or were they a little bit cautious before diving in?
Yeah, I think you'll find most fleets are pretty conservative. They're cautious to adopt new technologies, which makes sense given their profit margins. And I think the most meaningful thing for them is to be able to kind of touch it and feel it and drive it. And we did actually a 3-year pilot with our trucks in the northeastern region of British Columbia, and we got over 200,000 kilometers on the road with those trucks. But it wasn't with our drivers. The important part for us was to work with a commercial fleet. So our trucks are driving real loads, in this case mostly wood chips, and they're driving on real commercial routes with real truck drivers. And those drivers were really impressed with the performance of the truck. I think they even noticed a bit of a bump up on torque, which can be exciting for a driver when you're sitting beside another driver at a traffic light and you're able to get off the line faster. So there's those kind of positive aspects of the technology, but overall a really similar experience to what you would have with a diesel-only truck in terms of the rest of the performance on efficiency and being able to refuel in a similar time. That was one of the concerns from fleets was, if I have to refuel on hydrogen, because I think in the back of their mind they have electric vehicles where you're charging overnight, for example, a vehicle, and that's not the case with hydrogen. You fill it up at a pump that looks and feels kind of similar to how you would fill up on diesel, and then it's done in 6 to 7 minutes. So it's a pretty quick process on that side as well. So overall, we've gotten really good feedback, but it's after people have the chance to test it out themselves.
And for people that could be listening inside the industry there, how difficult is it for a firm to fit the hydrogen diesel co-combustion conversion kit to a range of their trucks there? Is that a time-consuming process, or is it much shorter than many people listening might imagine?
Yeah, for fleets that may be tuning in, we go through a fleet questionnaire with a number of questions on, for example, what's the dimensions of the wheelbase, so we can really understand if we can do a tank array that can fit in the back. As I was mentioning, it's in the back of the cab where we stick the tank array, and that's usually where the questions around fit come up is, how much hydrogen can we have on board? The more the better. But we've worked across a variety of different models, like Peterbilt and Freightliner. Those are the two with the most market penetration in Canada. But it's the same kind of questions that we'd ask if you had a Volvo, or even if it's not a heavy-duty truck, if it's a bus. We can also outfit it with hydrogen tanks. And interesting, that array goes on the roof of the bus. So there's lots of different options, and we have a pretty creative team to come up with solutions. We were even talking to someone yesterday about they had a double-decker bus, and where would you put the hydrogen in that case? So the team at Hydra is really innovative engineers that are solutions-oriented to coming up with creative ways of figuring out where the tank array best fits with the truck and with the application that the truck goes on. There's another example of a fleet that we were talking to that they use what's called a headache rack that protects the driver if the driver is hauling logs from, a log coming through the back of the cabin and, potentially injuring the driver. And so integrating a headache rack into the design of how we do the tank rack was, another thing that we creatively worked through.
And like I said a few moments ago, there is a big focus on sustainability at the moment. And there's also almost a feeling in the air of a desire for an appetite for change to make a difference with the world and re-examine how we're doing things and how big organisations are working. So what is it that excites you about the road ahead? Excuse the pun there, and the role that Hydra Energy will play in that future?
Yeah, as I said, I think the team here is really motivated by the opportunity to make a positive impact, and where we really play in that is in that difficult to abate sector to reduce the greenhouse gases. And there's on the technical side also some really interesting challenges in scaling up our solution, just like there's in any tech company. Ours is around, as we shift from different makes and models. We were talking about Freightliner and Peterbilt. When we shift to Volvo or buses, it's being able to do that faster so we can scale up. So one area that we're really excited about is building out this machine learning platform where we can integrate some artificial intelligence as we gather more data from doing more trucks, so we can do the conversions faster than what we're currently able to do. And that increased speed really enables our scaling in the future. The other area that naturally we're excited about is increasing displacement. So the more hydrogen, the greener the fuel consumption will be. So the more we can displace diesel with a low carbon hydrogen product, the more greenhouse gas emissions we're reducing. So that is another exciting area, and it ties into business development objectives too, because of course you want your customer to buy more product from you. So the more fuel we can displace on board, that means some more hydrogen fuel sales for Hydra. And then I think for me on the more business development front, I'm just really excited for more fleets to get to know about our solution, because I think we have something to offer that is very much a win-win for the fleets. And then as we get to know more fleets, working our way up into the OEMs is kind of the dream scenario for us, of being able to work with an OEM and have that Hydra kit just be a checkbox that a fleet would check off when they're interested in integrating hydrogen into their fleet.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come on here today and share your story and the difference that you're making in the world with technology. But before I do let you go, I always like to end the episode on a slightly fun note, and that is I ask my guests to contribute a song that means something to them, that's accompanied them throughout their successful career in tech, or just helps them get their head in the zone before going in a meeting or delivering a keynote. And I add all those songs to the Spotify playlist for this podcast. But is there a particular song that means anything to you, or that has a story behind it, that you'd like us to add to that list?
Sure. I've actually never been asked this question. It's quite cool. I love it. I actually always listen to Tilted. It's by Christina and the Queens, and it's just about embracing who you are, and it's okay if you have imperfections, and being proud of who you are and what you stand for. So I think it's very motivating, a song.
It's a great song. And although this is an audio podcast, I am doing a Christina and the Queens kind of dance, one of those Michael Jackson art theatre kind of dances there. But
I know, I love that video.
But before I let you go, for anyone listening, we'd just like to find out more information about Hydra Energy, the great work you're doing, or how to contact your team. What's the best way of doing that?
Sure. You can check out our website. It's just hydraenergy.com, or feel free to pop us an email. It's info, just info, at hydra-energy.ca.
Well, I love what you're doing here at Hydra, the difference you're making with technology, and also for coming on here and sharing your story, and also for infecting me with earworm of Christina and the Queens. That's going to be playing on my head all night now. But more than anything, just thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and for the work that you're doing on your podcast to really integrate technology into connecting people more, because it can go the opposite direction. So I'm really pleased to see the focus of this podcast. Thanks so much for having me, Neil.
So I cannot thank Jessica enough for sharing the story behind the great work that Hydra Energy is doing here, and also by using existing semi-trucks and Hydra's hydrogen as a service infrastructure, haulage firms can have hydrogen today. There's no need to wait for entirely new vehicles and a building of a new fueling infrastructure to be designed and built at some point in the future. And it's the fact that they're using technology and it's all available now. That is what I find incredibly cool. But over to you. Please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, if you'd like to work with me. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Let me know your thoughts, insights, experiences, or even if you've got any questions you would like to ask me. But we're out of time, I'm afraid. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, clogging up your podcast feeds. But a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.